for another update on what's going on in these crazy times in Western Australia. I was going to do a video, I'd been planning to do a video to go through what Mr. Col Blanch, the police minister, and his submission, what he was doing in the way of talking in front of the committee, the review committee, and the, what would you say, the misinformation, the information that was put forward in statistics that is very, very not representing the reality of what's going on. Things saying like 80,000 firearm instances last year was like every firearm owner thought multiple hundreds of firearm instances every day. What are they talking about? I've gone through and broken that down. It is because of a system that's designed to provide statistics to justify itself that such a, what turns out to be a lie, is in place, but it is built as where they get those statistics from. So listen, there was a fair bit I wanted to go through there, the checks and balances that he spoke about having, which they don't have any of for the process, and there's quite a bit of, let's go with misinformation that was involved in that. But, well, for all the inaccuracies and the fairly close to fraudulent situation that was going on there, no, the WA government decided to step it up a whole nother lot. Anyone who's paying attention whatsoever knows that the sovereign citizen issue has been turned into a, well, I would say, and I'll explain myself later, but an act of tyranny on West Australian population, which is not a hyperbole, it is what's actually happening, under the brackets of these dangerous sovereign citizens that are permeating our Western Australia. And I suppose to go through and explain that and how frightening, how on the edge of the abyss, or as I've heard people refer to, we're sliding into the abyss, we're halfway down the curve here, and where there's getting close to no return unless people wake up. We really are, for whether you call it democracy, freedom, whether you call it Australia as we know it, all those things are in the crosshairs. So before I go and get too much more emotional about trying to explain how serious its situation is, I want to break some things down as to what we're actually talking about and come back a fair few paces. The big issue that obviously is the issue attached to our firearms regulations and our police commissioner is the fact that what's actually happened is this is pre-crime that is in place. So Minority Report with Tom Cruise speaks about pre-crime where they get a premonition out of special things. Well, we obviously have a commissioner who can do that, because this is crime. These are crimes that haven't happened that they've acted on because they have suggested they will happen, because these people are dangerous. That's been said. So that is, we're in the world of, yes, pre-crime, where we're all thought crime, however you want to look at. This is largely driven out of what these people have shared on social media. And I'll get more into that as to what I can explain of those side of things. As for talking about these people, I don't know any of these people personally, but because I've taken on the cross to bear of sharing this to as many people as I can share it to with my channel, because I feel the responsibility to do that. There is no profit for me, there is no clicks for me, there is no anything that matters or helps my channel, but it does matter to me in the responsibility of sharing what's going on with people and trying to wake people up. This is very serious. Because I've taken on that role, people get told to ring me up, to tell me things, to tell me their story, to ask a little bit, looking for support, looking for people that makes them not feel so isolated, so someone to talk to, but also to share their story. And through some of the people that were directly raided have spoken to me. Some people who know the people who are directly raided have spoken to me, and some of the people who know those people in the way there's all sorts of different levels of what's going on where I have been ringing people, I have been taking phone calls and finding out what's actually going on. So I don't know where to start properly this, but let me start with, first of all, the sovereign citizen thing. Because of the Denzi Freeman thing now, which is, I've not entered into the conversation at all because I don't know what happened. I have a nonsensical story out from the media that says there was a tragedy that happened and that this somehow or other someone with a homemade single-shot firearm managed to shoot 2 police officers all carrying 10mm Glocks on their hips. I don't know. The story doesn't make any sense in multiple different levels. I'm not saying it didn't. I'm not saying it's not tragic, but I am saying it doesn't make any sense. So I can't put any credence to that. The fact that it was an ABC article, I think 3 weeks prior to that, bringing sovereign citizens into the crosshairs, and then this is about a sovereign citizen, and now this is about a sovereign citizen, doesn't smell like it happened by circumstance. It smells like something else is going on. Before I go down the conspiracy path, let's go with sovereign citizen. What we knew of as a sovereign citizen happened all over the world, but largely people who have had enough of their government decide they're going to mark out their own territory, take their own property and call it their own country, and so no longer pay taxes, no longer be involved with the government of the country they're in because they've called themselves a sovereign citizen. So that's what we understood as sovereign citizens. There is another thing that I've heard sovereign citizen used in the fashion of someone who feels they are that patriotic that they feel sovereign to their country and they're a sovereign citizen of their country, which actually there is, and I haven't used it recently, I haven't heard it used recently, but it is actually a fact they are consider themselves more patriotic than other people to their country, and it's used in that fashion also. The main detail that we've heard it from is some people who identified sovereign citizens have done some bad things, which is then in all the cases that have been put forward, there's been something instigated by the police and the sovereign citizens have done a very bad thing and there's some police killed. Of course, they just identified as a sovereign citizen. Now, if we just want to pick on, then rope the rest of the people into that herd, well, that could be a Christian. They do something horrible and we're going to have to get all the Christians, or maybe just a liberal voter and they do something horrible to get. So it's a very, very broad brush that doesn't have any real credit to it. But let's go into the more modern definition. There's a couple of things that are interesting to go into the more modern definition of a sovereign citizen. Largely it's been painted as people who disagree with some of what the government are up to, which I'd have to say would tend to be all of us if you dig deep enough. Very rarely, maybe the odd government employee or maybe the odd government minister. Even them, they know that there's things they do that the government, generally in lockstep with the media, lie to us in places. We all know that. That isn't a grey area, and we've been through a big event of that not that long ago. But there is some distrust of the government. That's not actually an unnatural thing. And that's actually what the largest thing they've turned this into, what a sovereign citizen is. I heard mentioned there's 1,000 sovereign citizens that have been identified in Western Australia. So I'm not sure there's one of the classic sovereign citizens that we always thought that was like the Hutt River Province and the Prince of the Hutt River Province, which was someone that happened a decade or so ago in Western Australia. It's all gone now, but that level of sovereign citizen, no, these are people who disagree with and stand opposed to some of our government's laws. So, okay, that's what they moved the definition to. And that actually comes to what they've actually mentioned, which is the common law sheriff. So what's a common law sheriff? That's a sovereign citizen. They've said, well, no, they don't consider themselves sovereign citizens. Maybe some do in some form or other, but no, that's not what they consider themselves. And then I'm not completely sure on the link to, I think there's people or groups that call themselves the Commonwealth Guardians and using Commonwealth laws, or the common law, which our Commonwealth earlier constitution, I think, was attached to. But basically common law is something, and for a quick definition of explaining what I understand the difference between, they refer to things that are lawful, and they also refer to our laws, our government laws, as corporate laws, and they are more about what's legal. In a lawful situation, is referred to, and this is common law, which is, I think even though it's a Commonwealth-based thing, but it's more international. But basically it says, if there's no victim, there's no victim, so no harm done to someone. So that means you weren't stolen from, you weren't physically hurt, you weren't hurt in some fashion, then there's no crime. So that's one of the core ingredients that they operate with. That means in places like a speeding fine in some places, and I've seen some stuff online where they'll talk about a speeding fine, and if you say this and say that and that sort of stuff, then you actually haven't broken the law, so you shouldn't have to pay the speeding fine, or something along those lines. I've never paid too much attention to it, but it comes into this, no, there's no harm, there was no victim in this situation. The government wasn't hurt because you sped, no one was hurt because of you sped, so there shouldn't be a fine. So that is, as you can imagine, a thorn in the side to some parts of particularly our revenue raising world. But that's a thing that is, yes, you can imagine it's a nuisance for our government, but there's other situations which I've recently heard in asking questions, what does a common law sheriff does? They study the law in the Commonwealth laws or in the common law side of things, they study that and they'll go in to help some people in legal situations. Now, my thought was, okay, if that's speeding fines, then okay, they've just been a nuisance. But no, the truth of it is it also talks about child custody when child protection services are, or I don't know which department it is, but when someone's trying to take your child away from you, because that can happen through very, very, not what you'd think the right way were things happening. Judgments that are made by arbitrary figures that don't make any sense. Well, these people are some of the common law sheriffs are the ones that keep your family together when the government is trying to tear it apart. So beyond that point, then I don't know. We're moving into areas I don't know, but that's who some of these people who've been targeted. But it gets bigger than that actually, because that's only, as they said, 70 homes raided, 44 licenses suspended or cancelled, and 27 storage areas inspected. So the maths doesn't add up a lot of making sense there. They raided 70 homes that weren't firearms owners, licensed firearms owners. There's a bit of I don't understand what they're telling there. But what I can tell you, and this is where the fact of tyranny is in place, is that those same people, like I just said, what they've just called sovereign citizens, in a lot of cases are attached to, or not even attached to, they have, in some form or other, they're able to be connected, and in some cases the same address, in some cases they've been to a meeting, in some cases they've been to a protest with these common law sheriffs. So that's a big concern. And yes, we're talking, and didn't happen in the last month, like's been mentioned. No, I know one of these in particular, a gentleman who went to a new town, who was just getting involved with in a rural town. There was a protest that was trying to stop a bank from seizing a property. And he thought, listen, that farmer doesn't sound like they've done the wrong thing. What's going on? I'll go down and be, support to them. So we'll be there and stand in the crowd and say this isn't fair. You shouldn't take the farm. Ended up signing a document to say that he was there and he agrees that the people shouldn't lose their farm. Well, that was over 2 years ago, and he was one of the people that was interrogated by 5 officers wearing body armour, carrying whatever, the select fire or whatever, I suppose I'll use the left term, it's not a real term, but assault rifle. These people, a group that specially came down to take his firearms and to interrogate him on his property. That's all from just being at this thing and sharing a little bit of what we all do in different places, sharing some social media. Now, those sort of people are being brought into simply by an acquaintance there's another story I've got. Someone who was actually involved, works for the government, curious as what these common law sheriffs were up to, went along with one of those things. I think there was at a police station. He was standing in the background to see what was going on, thought, okay, this isn't my cup of tea really, but he was just simply standing there looking. Another person raided, firearms taken from because of association. Which, didn't even know what they're talking about. What's a common law sheriff? What are you talking about? Until I'd researched this, I couldn't have told you what we're talking about, but that's what I can tell you, what I know has happened. But when it comes to the tyranny side of things, which is, yes, what's happening, these people were going in and breaking down gates and forcing their way into houses. They were doing this right there and then. There wasn't any conversation about this. These were armed. And I don't know the name of the task force that was doing this, but this was very thoroughly calculated. They obviously were in no fear of these people, as they were only a small group. The arm, all that sort of stuff was much more about creating fear and intimidation. I've seen how West Australian police work when it comes to when they feel there might be a threat at all. There's the full armoured car and 12 or 15 of them all dressed like that. The tactical response team are down doing that sort of stuff. So they actually have any fear of anything. They retrieve it way more differently. So they knew these people were passive of what they're doing. This is about intimidating them. And this is what I want to get to. There's a whole other group of people that are in fear for what the police department and for what the WA government are doing right now. I'm not being hyperbolic. This isn't an exaggeration. This is Tyranny 101. These are people. And who are these people? Well, let me explain now a little bit more about, common law sheriffs, about people that may have identified in various forms of there may be some, I don't know, I haven't found him, may have identified as a sovereign citizen. But they also are people that live in small communities. Generally, they're a bit more self-sustaining, but this includes home birthing, homeschooling, home farming, people who have, let's go through a little bit of their story. These tend to be smaller communities that fill up with people that are far more, not so interested in the government being involved, not actually a new thing in this world. A lot of these people have a very recent reason for being like this, but they go out to where they're looking after themselves. They're also used to, as homeschooling and home birthing are two ones that are particularly used to being conflated with the likes of sovereign citizens, with the likes of the common law sheriffs, because some might be in their community, but it is things that they've heard before. So these people are frightened. They literally are frightened. I literally know of people that have taken, the missus has taken the kids to Perth because they don't want their kids there to see their property getting raided. And they don't know what's going on. This stuff all happened by stealth. This was stuff that all of a sudden happened when there's body armoured police that are showing up on the doorstep to raid your house. They call them raids. There's nothing hyperbolic. There's nothing that's an exaggeration here. This really happened. And these people are really frightened. This is tyranny. This is what's actually happening. Now, these people, when I go through, where are these people? You may be, I'm not saying you, but people that are listening may be saying, well, okay, they're already strange people. They're living out by themselves. They're not doing what I do. Well, this comes from the unspoken word on YouTube to a certain degree of COVID. Yes, not that many years ago, our West Australian government burned a lot of people. And I didn't physically burn them, but they did throw them under the bus. Now, you might have a firefighter job, you might have a corporate job, you work for the government, you'll be one of the essential services where life just carried on. It wasn't too much, a little bit inconvenient, but just carried on. A lot of those people just went jab because the government, the media, all in lockstep, the same as they are in lockstep telling you how bad a sovereign citizen is. Well, they're all in lockstep telling you how good the injection was. Well, some of these people in that same situation, and there's particular ones in various forms. There's obviously people who had small restaurants or hospitality that they got squashed. There was really no help for them. They got squashed. There's also people like nurses and police, particularly nurses. There are the police side of things as well, but particularly nurses in some senses through the fact these people were dealing with COVID patients. They'd had COVID. They were as immune as you get. And then they were said, listen, you have the jab or you don't get to work here. Now, some, just as a point of principle, that doesn't make any sense. They're not doing that. Others, and I know police officers, I know nurses, I know various people that went with, okay, let's if we're going to do this, let's be pragmatic about this and let's do the research. So they went onto government websites. And on government websites, when they do what was there, holy moly, this doesn't make any sense. Now, for the people who are still doubling down on the fact of, oh no, that's just an anti-vaxxer, another label that the government came up with. You might have had all the vaccines your whole life because you didn't want to put in something that they had to change the definition of vaccine to get it into vaccine. Really happened. You should know why that is, but let's just carry on. That thing there, you didn't want it in you, and then you did the research, a very pragmatic thing. Now we have reviews, now we have scientific studies, now we have, there's all sorts of things going on all over the world where, yes, the vaccine companies are saying, yes, we knew it was poisonous, we knew it was going to kill people, we knew these things were bad, but largely the numbers were pretty good and were going to help in places for a short while. But there was a lot of toxins, there was a lot of problems with the vaccine. It's actually being said. And if you don't know that, hey, listen, stop watching ABC, stop watching Channel 9, Channel 7, start doing some looking out there. There is big things going on in that world, but the mainstream media, the government isn't sharing it. Well, of course they're not, because they end up being sort of a little bit guilty in that place. But those people are some of the people who lost their jobs, lost their businesses, lost everything, had to sell up, and they've moved. They've gone and bought a small lot, 300 acre lot, 500 acre lot, 700 acre lot, becoming more self-sustaining, so they don't need to rely on the government, eating better food, they understand what's going on with processed food, so they're being much more a community that's living like that. There's the farming side of the thing. I said home farming. This is a paddock to plate sort of logic where they've got the middleman out of it, they've got the corporate out of it and trying to deal with together. All these people are getting pushed in places. Homeschooling, they're not happy with their kids going in primary school doing gender studies. They're not happy with kids being indoctrinated. They want to do more of that. The home birthing, there is a lot of professional people that can do this job properly. They don't need the drugs, they don't need this. There's also another group that I got mentioned was that there's some mothers that have been through some pretty horrible things with our medical system that realized that it was actually part of the corporate, the drugs that are used, the pharmaceuticals, that sort of thing, that actually caused some of the problems that they had in birthing that have been damaged, be it mentally or be it physically, through that process. So there's a whole realm of this people, not, some would say waking up, and yes, there is a degree of waking up, but a lot say they just want to do it a different way. They don't want to be in anyone, they're not dangerous by any means. They're actually far more passive people. They're more inclined to be religious in some form or other. They're more inclined to try and do the gentle, peaceful way of doing things, and they just don't want to be involved. They are the frightened people. They are being targeted in some form or another. So when it comes to this sovereign citizen claim, that the government and the media are in lockstep to tell you they're bad people, it's not true. There has been, and I always say maybe, let's go, there has been some violence involved with those people. There has been, there's no question. As for what actually happened, I don't know. And we haven't been told, and I don't think we will be told. But, as I said, if one Liberal voter goes crazy and turns into an axe murderer, are we saying, okay, we're going to make a law and take all the axes off all, go in and license all the axes and take all the axes off all the people who are Liberal voters? Is that what we're saying? Because there isn't any actual, they have conflated this. They have conflated all sovereign citizens with violence. They've also conflated common law sheriffs with sovereign citizens. They've joined all this together. There's another very, very important thing I want to say in this situation. For all the politicians that are going quiet right this second, this is a very, very telling point. As I said, we're sliding into the abyss. That's the process we're in right now. This is really, really serious what's coming forward. We've gone to thought crime. We've gone to where we've set up a set of regulations which purely say that the commissioner's opinion of your opinion can put you in the crosshairs of, well, however far he wants to take it, because he's also in the position between him and the police minister, they can write the regulations to turn that into whatever they want. The checks and balances they spoke of, no, the checks and balances all reference to the regulations that they wrote. A self-fulfilling prophecy or a self-fulfilling set of regulations to justify the regulations. This is an extraordinary dangerous place. And we turn that into where we use the thought crime process or the pre-crime process, then you are accused of what he thinks you're accused, which means you're guilty of what you're accused of. That's a really, really dangerous place. So politicians, we really have West Australians, innocent West Australians that have done nothing wrong whatsoever. These people were stood on government previously. That's what actually happened. Now, lots of errors were made, lots of poor judgment was made, or maybe lots of people were manipulated through the process of COVID. But some really bad things happened. If you aren't aware of that, please do some research, but it really did. Now, we're not talking at this stage about retribution for that process. What we are talking about is these people need a break. These people haven't done anything wrong and they're being persecuted again. But I want you to think a step past this. When you take pragmatic people that have been pushed really hard and they've worked out a way to rebuild and get it back to going again, and they're working and they're not trying to get in anyone's face, and then you go and attack them, what are you asking? Are you simply expecting them to roll over again? Now, not one of them, to me, has shown any form or any sign of violence or wanting retribution or any of that sort of stuff. They just want to live their own lives. But what exactly are you encouraging? What I can tell you, and a few people have rung me up to say, what the Parliament should be talking about is this gun process they're on, especially when you start to attack in this sort of place, people who've taken on the responsibility of their communities, taken on the responsibility in some cases to use firearms, whether that's culling, whether that's pest control, whether that's protecting livestock, whatever it is, they've taken on that responsibility. And you've said, no, well, I've decided because of your social media posts that you think that maybe some of the government things aren't right, then because you have a little dissent for the government, I'm going to take your firearm away. Are you really expecting this to stop? Now, those people, all the licensed firearms owners people, have obviously shown you very thoroughly they'll follow the law to the letter of the law when it comes to that sort of thing. But is everyone all over the place simply going to roll over? Or are you asking the 0.1% to go with, you know what, let's go with the legal firearms. Let's do that. Because if I can get one, I'll have to pay the money for it. Then I can have it. The government needs to know about it. I'm not getting raided. Nothing's happening because I've got one. Now, that might be the odd individual that actually thinks of moving it by themselves. But what you're asking for, as happens every time, is the black market to all of a sudden become a massively profitable thing. And it'll organize all the stealth, all the hiding, all the doing that sort of stuff. It'll do it. Organized crime, the same people that you say you're against, this law, what you're up to, is emboldening them, is encouraging them, is giving them the market they need. Look at drugs, look at tobacco, look at every time, look at prohibition back in years ago. Every time you want to play this game, that's what happens. So listen, I suppose our government, our Labor government seems to be hell-bent on doing this regardless. No logic involved, like so many things, like the immigration, like so many things. Doesn't matter, we'll just power on in here because they've got the blinkers on and this is what, that's where the carrot is, that's where I'm going. But everyone else, time for you to stand up. And if you don't, we are watching. So we need some politicians from wherever they are to stand up and say, this is not okay. This went way too far. This is inappropriate. This is pre-crime. This we do need to stop. This action needs to stop. And we're going to have to take and tear those regulations apart. Because in there, it says the commissioner can pretty much do whatever he wants to do. And if he's not happy with the power he's got, he can go and talk to his mate, which is definitely all on side with the minister, and they can rewrite things without any oversights whatsoever and change it to whatever they want. Now, if you didn't know it's coming, here it is. I feel this is a tactical error. They've made a mistake in this situation. They've gone too early. For that reason, I don't think it's their decision. I think they got pushed by Canberra, or they got pushed by the people who run Canberra, or maybe the people who run WA. They got pushed. Something else happened. This is about a bigger deal. This is about the content they were sharing. This is about stopping people sharing content. And they've conflated so much of putting a group together to actually make them the bad guys to justify all this, but it's about bigger things. Doesn't matter, it was all able to happen. Where did it happen? In WA? 3,000, 5,000 kilometres away from there when there's any issues. Other side of the country, other state. We are the low population states, they are the high population states. Doesn't make sense in any shape, form, fashion, but they used our way overreaching laws to do this. So everywhere we should be waking up. Politicians, get some to stand up. As for what you should be doing, you should be writing into your member, into everyone. You should be writing, so this is way out of control. This is a story you would expect from 1940 Germany. This is not a story you'd expect from 2025 Western Australia. Anyway, there's another I should mention. It's a long video. I'm sorry for that. A lot to say on that side of things. There's a video. I'll put a link down there. Topher Field did stuff. He's touched on a fair bit of this. Very good logic and very good angle to where this is. I think I've filled in some of the gaps as to this. Like I said, this sovereign citizen isn't just a. There's more involved in those words than you realise. Listen, beyond that point, that's all I got to say on it today. I'll do more on those stats and the things that the police minister is up to in justifying these regulations and break that down in a later video. But other than that, thank you very much for checking in, and we'll catch you next time.